Okay, is everybody ready? Okay. I call the Patton Township Board of Supervisors meeting Wednesday, October the 23rd, 2024 at 5:30 to order. We welcome all, especially new Patton Township residents, to the Patton Township community of Place for All. As you are able, please join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know somebody has a...
We're trying to figure that out.
Okay.
Somebody's saying, it sounds like it's right over here. It's coming out of that speaker. I don't know.
Is it mine?
I'm hearing it in my left ear.
Okay. Thank you.
Is it coming?
But I don't know if anybody can hear us online.
Oh, no. Look at this. Oh. My
Whose speaker
laptop.
is it?
They've already seen it.
Is it?
It might be mine.
Yeah, I think
It
it
does
is.
sound like yours.
Sound shouldn't be on.
You're muted. Betsy.
Is it me?
It's Betsy.
Betsy hasn't been let in yet.
Is that better?
No. We ask everyone to be patient with us. We have technical difficulties at this moment.
Betsy, you haven't even joined yet, have you?
You know what, I haven't.
But
It's
the
trying
speaker's
to.
on
I've had
this.
trouble.
I can hear it coming out of mine.
It's coming out.
I had trouble hooking onto the internet.
Yeah.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, I forgot about that. Saw something. Here we go.
Sounds.
It's not just on, it's not muting yourself, it's turning the sound on.
Yeah, don't turn the sound. The sound's off for everybody that has an iPad up there.
It was on, it was coming out of here.
Yeah, I think it's
Oh,
on. No, I still hear it.
Yeah, I still hear it.
Yeah, it's coming out of here. Oh, that was right.
Let me see.
You have to, it will only go to the very small.
Ours is set up different because she's muted. She shouldn't be in no
No, if her
sound.
sound is up, you can hear her sound, it echoes through her sound.
Yeah.
You gotta turn your sound down and mute your sound.
I disconnected the audio, so
There we
that'll
go.
help.
It's all good.
Don't ask me why.
Okay, I love
We-
technology.
We thank everyone's patience on this. Next on the agenda is announcements. Are there any announcements at this time?
We will have a brief executive session after this meeting to discuss a real estate matter.
Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, are there any additional items to be posted on the agenda at this time? All right, seeing none. Public comments. Residents, taxpayers may address the board on issues of interest to the township. Comments related to a specific agenda item should be deferred until that point in the meeting. If you are attending on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature of the Zoom application and wait for the chair to indicate it is your opportunity to speak. If you are attending in person, please approach the podium and wait for the chair to indicate it is your opportunity to speak. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Are there any public comments at this time?
I don't see any.
All right, moving on. Next on the agenda is presentations and public hearings. First is 2025-2029 Capital Improvement Plan. Our Township Manager, Amy Vargas, and our Finance Director, Larry Pegert, will present the initial draft for 2025-2029 CIP.
Let Larry do that.
Good evening. It's that time of the year again. We're going to start basically our budget process by looking at the CIP. The CIP is a tool that helps us plan on how we're going to fund special projects, and in addition to any additional employees we might want to add, additional equipment we might want to add over the next 5 years. So it helps us to look as to whether we can fund it through our general fund or our LFT fund, or we could fund it whether we need to borrow money to fund some of the projects, or whether, how we can fund those projects. So 3 main things that the CPI does is it looks at an overview of the forecasted revenues and expenditures, the debt service, and capital expenditures over the next 5 years. It looks at capital projects and other significant expenditures in those 5 years, and it gives a forecast of anticipated tax rates required to support the CIP. So with that, we'll take a look at the CIP for 2025 through 2029. This also will be used to build the 2025 budget if there's no changes to the CIP. So first of all, let's look at the new projects. One of the new projects we have this year, it's a small one, but it's an internship program, and the goal of the program is to show Penn State students what a rewarding career in local government can be. It is budgeted for $2,500 per year from 2025 through 2029, not 2024. We're looking at upgrading the technology in the meeting room here to address accessibility, and that we're looking at $20,000 in 2025 to upgrade the technology. We're looking at invasive species control, which will look at non-native invasive plant and native competitive plant control will be performed in the Haw Family Preserve, and that's budgeted at $44,387,000 in 2025. We're looking at also a deer exclusion fence in the Haw Family Preserve, which would be $40,000 in 2025. We will be looking at identifying opportunities for the public to engage with the Haw Family Preserve, the Grange Woods Preserve, and the Seward property. And that would be $30,000 per year in 2025 and 2026. We will be looking at obtaining easements over the last 2 pieces of the Bellefonte Central Rail Trail, and that those easements would be $10,000 in 2025. We would be looking to complete the connector between Douglas Drive and the Valley Vista Shared Use Path, and that would be in 2026, and that would cost $25,000. The township would be seeking PennDOT funding to complete Douglas Drive and Atherton Street pedestrian upgrades, and that would be $20,000 in 2026. In 2028, we would be looking at doing an overlay on Wattle Road from Clearview Avenue to Oakwood Avenue, and the township will seek state funding to complete this, and that would be $209,000. And we would also be looking at, in 2027, seeking state funding to overlay between the township line to Oakwood Drive of Vira Boulevard and improve the pedestrian crossings into stormwater upgrades. And that would be $1,200,000 in 2027. We would be looking at portable radio replacement, which includes the radios, bank chargers, batteries, carriers, and earpieces in 2026 of $102,200. We would be spending $48,533 in 2025 for microsurfacing Circleville Road from the Patton wetland to the park. We'd also be looking at Valley Vista pedestrian improvements in 2026 to rehabilitate the roadway surface by milling the existing deteriorating pavement and installing new warm mix asphalt pavement. We applied for $567,000 in multimodal funding. The total project would be $630,000, and that project we would be looking to do in 2026. The township will use funding from DCED to complete upgrades to the stormwater system along Toftree Avenue from Waddle Road to Quickerwood Drive, and that project would be $200,000 in 2025. Finally, I believe this is the final project, traffic signal battery backups will be purchased for the traffic signals at Valley Vista Drive and Carnegie Drive, and at Valley Vista Drive and Lowe's Lane, and that will cost $30,000. The projected real estate tax rates, this shows from 2023 through 2029. In 2023, our total rate was 9.4 mils. In 2024, we had the increase that we're currently under that took us from 9.4 to 9.9. That's 9.3 mils plus 0.6 of a mil for open space. From 2025 through 2029, we are anticipating no tax increases.
Can you say that again, please?
We are anticipating no tax increases. And then our projected year-end cash balance, as you know, we like to keep this between 8 and 15% of our expenditures. In 2024, we're projecting a 16.3%, 2025, 11%, 2026, a 9.5%, 2027, 11.1%, 2028, 15.5%, and 2029 is 19.8%. But when remember, when we're looking out there in 2028 and 2029, it's pretty far off. So those are more guesses than the 2024, 2025 numbers. And with that, I will take any questions and comments on the CIP.
Okay, any questions for Larry at this time? Okay,
I have
Supervisor Whitman?
I have a bunch. And I'm not certain if they're appropriate to ask Larry, but I'm just going to ask. You talked the deer exclusion fence, that's not around all of Hot Track.
No, that's a portion of it. You'll be seeing that at the open
That's what I
space.
figured.
Yep.
Yeah, I just was double checking that. And
Good thing you didn't ask Larry that. Yes, no idea.
let's see. Sections of, the Bellefonte Central Rail Trail. The portions that are outside of Patton, I know that doesn't come under our jurisdiction at all, but we're basically working on the portion that's in Patton Township.
Right.
And what's going on between Patton and Bellefonte? That would be
Benner Township?
Benner?
Thank you. We don't know, or
No, we don't know.
okay.
No, there are two sections of the Bellefonte Central Rail Trail right now that are not, we don't have easements on. So one is
In
adjacent to the golf course
Yeah,
in
right.
Patton, and the other one is adjacent to Cedar Cliff Development. So we're
Oh,
working to get
gotcha.
those easements.
So we've
next
just
year.
taken care of our, I figured that. Yeah, thanks for the Douglas Drive connector. I'm assuming there's going to be a crosswalk.
So,
there.
yeah, and we're waiting until 26.
That's tricky.
Yeah, so the one on Atherton and then the one for the Valley Vista Shared Use Path, we're waiting until we see the plans for the middle school.
Good, yeah, good idea. Okay, what is here? Oh, Patton Wetland, I suppose, I'm assuming that is kind of across from that that indentation in the path. Do you know what I'm talking about, Ken? Is the Patton Wetlands?
Oh,
And
it's kind of the horseshoe on.
There's a horseshoe there, gotcha,
Yeah.
and then across from that is the wetlands, so
Yes.
just, thanks. Okay, great, thank you, they were just looking ahead at things, and then, yeah, okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay. I had already asked Amy and Larry my questions. Any other questions for them at this time? Okay. Seeing no questions.
Okay,
Larry?
and then finally, this will come back at our meeting in December, mid-December, whatever date that is, probably around the 14th or somewhere. And that's when we will approve the CIP and the budget together.
And also, I'll just mention, because we have some folks on Zoom, this document is actually will live on our website as well, so that folks can provide any feedback they might have on any of the projects we're proposing.
Thank you both for this, and staff for working on this diligently. I see no other questions. Next on the agenda is the Fall Road Report, and that's Director of Public Works, Ken Fodor. Ken?
Okay. You have a copy of the Fall Road Report in your packet. The way the road report is structured is the higher the number issued to a roadway, the poorer condition the roadway is in. One thing just to give you an idea, I did place on all your places a copy of a pie chart from 2019. If you take a look at that, you can kind of see where we're kind of slipping backwards a little bit. We need to do a little bit more work to try to catch up. Because in 2019, we did have more roads that were in, poor condition, where we have those down to 2%, but where we slipped was in our excellent condition. We went from 24% to 17 today, and we have increased in the good to fair condition roadways. So the condition of our roadways, we just need to be able to, going forward, try to utilize some other programs potentially, or try to find some other revenue streams to increase the ability for us to work on those roadways. And what we're looking at is another computer model to look at our roadway information to present us with a kind of a list of roads to look at. Because the model we use right now is very heavily weighted toward ADT. Because if you look at your road report, the first page doesn't have Christopher Lane on it. Christopher Lane doesn't show up until the second page. Well, unfortunately, Christopher Lane is probably the worst road we have right now. So that's where we run into this problem. Roadways that have a high ADT, they get favored over roadways that don't have as much traffic on. But yet then that roadway is degrading, and it's going to be in worse condition if we don't address it. It's a lot easier to do just a mill and overlay than it is to go in and do a complete rebuild of the roadway. It's a lot more cost effective to just do a mill and overlay.
Okay.
What is ADT
Supervisor
again?
Whitman?
Average daily trips.
Trips, I knew I should
Yep.
know that. Thank you, okay.
I'm sorry, are there any questions for Ken at this time? Ken, can you give us a minute? I want to look over.
It's right in the report.
Can we get extra funding for those roads that I won't say are overlooked, but lower on our, it's not as much traffic on them, but they definitely need.
We're better off to look at funding through grants and so forth on the higher traveled roadways and so forth,
Okay.
like Valley Vista Drive or Vira Boulevard and so forth, and using the township's funds or liquid fuel funds for some of the minor roadways, like Christopher Lane or North Oak Lane, Hillside and things, those roadways, because the state's gonna look at it, what are we affecting with a grant or something?
Okay.
Same as when we are applying for the grant in Valley Vista, we're including that pedestrian upgrade and so forth, which puts it further up because it checks another box whenever we're doing it. So strategically, if you try to plan your grant application and so forth, you try to check as many of those boxes as we can to get ourselves further up the chain.
And I will say that Michelle, our engineer, consulting engineer, has been amazing because she sat down with Ken and I and mapped out the entire road program from now until 2030. And then we looked at what kind of grants can we apply for, knowing that we also apply for some of the same programs that Susan Wheeler applies for. So we're coordinating all of this so that we're not taking away other opportunities, but then looking at how we can stretch our dollars. And so we mentioned the microsurfacing program. We started doing that again this year. We hadn't done that in a couple of years. And that's a really great way to extend the life of our roads so that they don't need to be paved quite as soon as they normally would. So that's something we also want to continue to do as time goes on, and perhaps get to a point where right now we have about $50,000 budget for that every year. Perhaps get to a point where we can build up a fund balance in our state fund and then use more liquid fuels funding for that and do more roads. So trying to be strategic, because roads are, probably the biggest expense we have in the township, and we have a lot of roads. We have 60.28 miles of roads, which is a lot of roads to maintain, and looking strategically at how we can maintain that infrastructure, because that's obviously the number one thing that our residents see are the roads in front of their homes.
Can we go online and find the roadway classes?
It's in the township ordinances and so forth, it's listed, but the classifications, we basically, have 4 classifications of roadways. We have a minor roadway, which the average daily trips are less than 50. A local roadway is less than 1,000. Now, the township breaks up local into local 1 and 2, but theory is local trips or local roadways are from 51 trips per day up to 1,500.
Okay.
And our collector roadways, we break those into 4 categories, but a collector roadway really is from 1,501 trips to 10,000 trips a day. And an arterial roadway is 10,000 trips or more per day. We have, I'm going to say minor roadways, approximately 2 miles. Local roads, we have about somewhere around, I believe, let's see, it looks like 47. And our collector roadways are around approximately 10 and about 1.2 miles of arterial. So our biggest area is our local roads, which are in developments and so forth.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ken at this time? Seeing none, Ken, thank you. Thank you for the breakout. This is great. Right. So next on the agenda is public safety, and we have no items. Public works operations, we have no items. Engineering, planning, and zoning, we have community gardens, and Amy, I think you're going to take this.
Yep, so the Community Gardens Subcommittee, which is comprised of Heidi Miller, Ann Donovan, and Betsy, met in September with myself to discuss the gardens, its operations, and the future of the program. We're interested in kind of rebooting this program so it'll be a little more self-governed and a little more self-sufficient, because right now the program relies pretty heavily on the township and township staff. So when we talked back in September, we came up with 3 recommendations, which were then presented to the Open Space Committee. The first is to separate the Community Garden Committee from the Open Space Program. So there would be created a Community Garden Subcommittee that then we can reach out to the gardeners and have some of the gardeners help staff that committee as well. So they're taking ownership in the place where they're doing their gardening. And then this group can also, we sometimes have neighbor issues between gardeners. This group can handle some of those neighbor issues that might arise during the gardening season. We'd like to rely less on Patton Township to operate the gardens. We're still kind of talking about this and what this would look like. At a minimum, we know the township needs to continue to collect the rents and maintain the renter information, mow and maintain the plots that aren't being rented, maintain the deer exclusion fence that we have around the gardens and the parking area, and then provide water, compost, mulch, wood chips, and the porta potty itself. And then the last recommendation, kind of in recognition of the fact that we're going to pull back a little bit on the township side, is to lower the plot rental fees from $60 to $50 per plot. This would just, again, reflect the fact that we're kind of pushing some of those services back onto the gardens committee themselves, the gardeners themselves. So the Open Space Committee discussed this at their October meeting, and they agreed with the recommendations, but they're a little nervous, I will say. I think that's a fair assessment. And they discussed making this a pilot to see if this works. So we take a year and kind of see how it's going. We have looked at, I will tell you, the subcommittee, we looked at a model from Ithaca, New York, and Ithaca has a fantastic community garden that is all self-governed, all self-run. I think the city just gave them the land. So I think eventually we'd like to see if we could move more towards that model. But their recommendation to the board is that this become a pilot program and that the Open Space Committee asks that the Community Garden Subcommittee report back to them twice a year.
Okay. Question. Has this been open to the gardeners that work on, that have plots?
So the next step in this is if the board agrees, we wanted to get your blessing, we're actually drafting a letter and then we're going to revise the rules and regulations for the gardens to reflect, because they've become, when the garden first started, the regulations that I read from back then, they were very friendly and community building oriented type regulations. They've become more, I don't want to say bureaucratic, but they're more bureaucratic. Like you can't do this, you can't do that, not as welcoming. So the committee, the subcommittee wants to draft a letter, which Heidi's already put together, and then put together a revised rules and regulations, send that out to all the gardeners, because this is the time when they need to go out and clean up their plots and then decide what they want to do for next year. So then we'll lay out in that letter kind of what the plan is moving forward, so folks know, eyes wide open, if they want to continue on with us or they want to pursue a different garden in town.
I would like to reach out, because if I'm not mistaken, our former board member, Dan Trevino, was one of the members. Betsy, do you remember? Is he one?
I do, and I've already talked to him about it.
Okay.
So, yeah, and Ann Donovan, who's there, is kind of the community center person.
Okay.
She knows a lot of the people. And one of our former members on the Open Space Stewardship Committee, Dale Reed. Yeah, he's a big gardener. He and his buddies. Ann knows a lot of the other people. So I think it's important, and we've talked about this, the garden subcommittee talked about reaching out to specific individuals and sort of, once you talk and get specific individuals on board, it's a lot easier. You build that support or get your base questions out of the way and dealt with.
Okay, I just want to make sure, we're moving forward. Supervisor, anybody else? Supervisor Magruder.
Yeah, I've been in support of moving in this way, of relinquishing some responsibility from the township and putting a little bit more on the individuals who actually utilize it. I am all in favor of the plan. I guess I can only speak for my specific type of work in my organization. When we think about pilots, we want to give things time to sort of, not fester, that's a horrible word, but germinate, let's just say that, develop. And so for me, I would feel more comfortable with like a 2-year type pilot, something longer, given that there's going to be a lot of hiccups, I imagine, within that first year, and seeing as I imagine they're not gardening for 365 days, it's going to be hard to get a good data point from just 1 year, and so I would recommend probably like a 2-year type of pilot, that would feel a lot better as opposed to 1 year and then things don't work out and then it's just kicked back to us and we call it a failure.
Supervisor Abrams, you have any comment?
No, but I agree with this
Okay.
longer time.
Madam
Supervisor?
Chair,
Yes.
there is a comment, Fedor online would like to make a comment.
Okay.
Go ahead, Fedor.
Yes, if I'm free to speak now.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Fedor. I live in Park Forest Village here in Patton Township. I just wanted to comment regarding my experiences with the garden and the rental fees. I don't necessarily view the rental fee system as the most fair. I will explain why. Not all of us necessarily have the means to get to the garden. It's not close to everyone. We're not all necessarily the fittest. We don't all have the most experience with gardening. So while the fee isn't necessarily exorbitant, I wouldn't say it's perhaps the most fair. Now, I am interested in, potentially giving those gardeners maybe more power to issue or summon public works. I know, for example, maybe composting and maintaining certain land might not be the easiest task for people or necessarily the easiest thing to arrange with private funding. So I'm asking the township to try to look at this more equitably. And let's see. And maybe it's possible we could work out some contributory system, but that is just, these are just my thoughts. I don't think it should be, it should be on the, the renters of the plot, forking over all of the money for it. I think the plots should go to those, who need it the most in the township. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ken, I see you want to.
Yeah, I guess a couple things to look at. The garden started off at about 50% the size it is now, or a little bit smaller. We got to the point where we maybe only had 5 or 6 plots potentially, or we were down into the single digits. We decided we would expand it. We always have plots available at the moment. There's plenty of plots available. The township does supply compost for free. We supply all the needed tools to work the garden and so forth. We supply free water. We supply materials such as the ability to transport water. We have water buggies. We have sprinkling cans. And years ago, the gardeners actually, they did hold a couple evening events and so forth, and they kind of worked together because at the moment, the mulch and so forth on trails and so forth has been put down by the township staff, and prior to that, it was put down by the gardeners. The gardeners took care of all of that themselves. And so, I mean, I can understand his point where, it might be difficult for some people to get to the location, but unfortunately, that's where we have the large piece of land that we could do this with. But I think we do try to provide a fairly economical solution for people, because, yeah, with the amount of fee that's charged and so forth, but yet then, what was provided with that? There was parking provided. There was a bathroom provided. There was water provided. There's compost provided. There is equipment and tools provided. The fence is provided around the area to keep deer from, accessing the site. And so there is a lot of things that are provided for the fee that's charged. I don't know how we could structure things or make it more accessible to somebody. And what Amy's talking about, that potentially the fees could even potentially reduce.
Right.
So, I mean, it's difficult to do much more because I don't really see that would be a good use of our public works individuals to do much more out there than what we do with maintaining the unused plots and with what we already do.
Supervisor Whitman, I see.
Yeah, thanks. One thing we could consider is if someone really did not have the means to pay for the garden, we could have a application that they could go through requesting relief from the rental fee.
Right.
And as far as access to the garden, it's actually one of the most accessible garden sites, I think, and because of our bike path system. There are hills, granted that's kind of hard, but really you don't need a car to get there. All the tools are there, so you don't have to carry a rake back and forth on your bike. So it's accessible for most parts in Patton Township. Right? It's really very accessible. I mean, you might have to walk 5 or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, but yeah.
Thank
But
you.
thank you for those comments.
Thank you for the comments.
Supervisor Abrams.
Supervisor Abrams.
Thank you. Do we have any feel for how many people have found this to be a financial burden now, or is this not a problem at the moment?
I've not heard, or I don't think we've ever heard from anyone that it's a financial burden now. I will say that the Ithaca model that we've kind of been looking at, they allow folks to do work hours and I think then reduce their plot fee based on the number of work hours. So that's something, long-term that could be considered for this program as well to help out folks that maybe need a little bit of they have a little bit of a financial hardship.
Okay, thank you. Amy, if we were to adopt this, I would like to take on Supervisor Magruder's suggestion of the 2-year.
Yep, I agree with that.
Okay, then can I get a motion
So moved.
to create a community garden subcommittee? Can I get a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion passes with the creation of the community garden subcommittee and to add the 2-year pilot. All right? Thank you. Next on the agenda is administration. There are no items. Consent agenda. There are no items. The manager report. There are no items. And for committee reports, most of us will be going on our committee this week and next week, so there are no committee reports. Other business, seeing none. Then can I get an adjournment?
We're going to recess.
Oh, we recess and go into executive
Executive session,
session.
yep.